Today we get a double feature.
I thought you said you don't have buried treasures.
Oh, we'll get to that later. So, what is Buried Treasures? Buried Treasures was a free bonus CD originally released with the Time Ring trilogy when it was sold as a tri-pack. So I guess it was more a quad pack. And the whole thing was offered at a special discounted rate. It contained 2 original Bernice Summerfield stories, the very first original stories from Big Finish, I believe. It also includes an interview with Paul Cornell and a music suite, as well as a trailer for The Range. The big things that we care about from this release are the 2 original stories. I still don't have the CD, so we'll do what we can. The first story, Making Myths, written by Jacqueline Rayner, has only officially had a digital release as part of a Big Finish podcast episode released in 2010 that can't be found online anymore because the releases on both a podcast website I looked at and the Big Finish website do not go back that far. It's a comedy starring Lisa Bowerman and Sarah Mowat. From what I can see, it's a light comedy that only really seems to be trying to be fun, and therefore it's not the most essential story to have, but it is mostly notable for being the first original story for Bernice. Closure is one of the few Bernice Summerfield stories to be written by her creator, Paul Cornell. The story has actually had a digital release. That you can't get anymore. Thankfully, if you get Death in the Daleks, it's in there. So, that's good. I just checked the sleeve of Death in the Daleks, and it's not just a thing they put on the website. The actual CD, it's probably not available anymore, but the CD itself does say, this contains the story Closure, written by Paul Cornell, and starring Lisa Bowerman and Sarah Mowat. It was directed by Gary Russell, with post-production by Harvey Summers, and was originally released on the limited edition CD Buried Treasures. This version has been restored and remastered by David Darlington. So I guess it is slightly different, but, I guess that's not as important as long as we have the story in some format. The version I listen to is the digital version, that you can't get anymore, and for context on when it came out, that version ended with some trailers. What for other Bernice Summerfield stories. Which ones? The stories so far, volumes 1 and 2, and The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield, volume 6, released in 2018 and 2020. Onto the story itself, it's a 2-hander starring Lisa Bowerman and Sarah Mowat, where Bernice time travels to tell a woman her son will grow up to become a dictator, and he will cause a new world war on their planet. This confuses the woman, since they just had a world war, and Bernice has to say it's going to be another one that comes right after this one, partially as a consequence. And this just feels like a lightly changed version of World Wars I and II from Earth, obviously. And yeah, it works really well. I originally didn't put this on my Just War review. I considered it, but I dismissed it because I'm like, that's kind of its own thing. It's not going to tie in directly to it. So anyway, it ties in directly to Just War and very little with Dragon's Wrath. It's a genuinely harrowing story, delivered exceptionally well by Bowerman and Mowat, featuring such intense descriptions of what is going to happen in the future, and it's just a great telling of the hypothetical that people like to talk about of, would you time travel back and kill baby Hitler? But it's honestly really hard to actually talk about this story, so I'll leave it there, but please get this in the format it exists in. It's really good, and like I said, it's intense, but it's worth it. It's good. Now, onto the main story of this review, Dragon's Wrath. Dragon's Wrath is a story written by Justin Richards, adapted by Jacqueline Rayner, with a cover by Fred Gambino, and every time I look at this cover, I feel like it's going to be guest starring Carol Ann Ford, which every other release of this first series brought in a Doctor Who guest star. Don't tell me I'm wrong to have guessed that. I guess it's the short hair that made me think of Carol Ann Ford. But I guess this is supposed to be Bernice, so that's just on me. The story does actually have a featured Doctor Who guest star, Richard Franklin. I wish I could say more about his guest role, but, yeah, we'll get to that. The main adaptational piece of note in this is that this was just a Bernice Summerfield book, not a Doctor Who book, so they didn't need to remove the Doctor from the plot, which is good, because there's so much with this story, I can't imagine what would have happened if they had to do that as well. I'm definitely not avoiding talking about the story for a minute as I talk about the new theme song for this episode. At a few points in my book here, they describe this as being a sort of James Bond type of story, so the director Edward Salt thought that it should have a Bond-inspired theme song. So this features a theme song with a singer, like all the openings to the Bond films. He apparently thought that the theme song would only be used for this one release, but it was used for a while afterwards. And I do get why. You don't commission a new theme song and then just let it be. For instance, the War Doctor stories featured a new version of the Doctor Who theme that they created for that. Did they let that rest after the first series ended? No. When the 8th Doctor has stories taking place in the Time War, he uses that theme as well. And that was a really good decision. I love that. So, yes, that was great. But all that to say, when you have a new theme song, you really can't just use it as a one-off. It has to stick around for a little bit. So, what are my thoughts on this theme song? It's odd. Mostly because it involves a singer. Like I said, this was inspired by the James Bond films. And I can't honestly say whether or not this theme song works as an audio release. I don't hate it. It's just weird. Amongst Big Finish's many original theme songs that they have done over the years, this is the only one that involves singing, so it's mostly odd for that. It just feels weirder than it probably is because of that fact. Like, the only other theme song that they've had that involves any kind of singing that I can think of is Adamant Lives, which is them remaking an existing theme, so it doesn't really count. And while sitting here just now, I also remembered Sapphire and Steel, which again featured talking in a theme song. Not singing, but talking, so it's closer, but again, that's an existing theme song that they adapted, so it still doesn't count. Okay, I can't avoid this anymore. Let's talk about the story itself. It starts with Bernice and a historian being hired for a job, and this historian guy looks down on Bernice's entire profession, sort of like how the Doctor looks down on archaeologists. But while the Doctor looks down on archaeologists because he would rather travel to the history and see it, this guy seems to think, hey, we already know history, what's there left to dig up? But you can learn more history, like more things worth putting in those history books, by finding it. Then later, they're told that part of their mission is to find a dragon statue. Bernice takes the historian back to her place, where she pulls out a dragon statue that she got in the actual opening scene of the story that I skipped over. But the historian says there's only one statue, and it's kept in a private collection by their employer. So they need to figure that out. They then go and see the real dragon before they go on their actual mission, and Bernice sees it and realizes even though they say that this statue has not been touched in hundreds of years, she can tell from the pattern on the velvet pad it's on that it has been moved recently. So they need to figure that out. They then go to a dig with other people, and we get like 2 scenes with them, and then everyone dies. They then travel back and somehow end up with 3 statues. Seriously, I lost track of where the 3rd one came from, but apparently one of them has a recording device in it, which is the real one, and somehow they know about the recording device. Later, at a public hearing, trial, I don't know, they go and Bernice has to show that one of these is real with the recording device, so she's going to destroy the others. And She has to do that in order to stop her employers, who are the bad guys, while getting help from these other people who say they are the good guys, but are also really the bad guys. Okay, we need to talk about this. Now, I'm sure that the book's plot is presented in its entirety, but it is so cramped that I honestly just got lost while listening to this. And part of that is because of one important fact I didn't bring up earlier, and that is that all of the other releases from this first series were 2 discs, 2-hour stories, which makes sense because you're adapting a novel, which can be as long as it wants. But this release, it's only 1 disc. So as a result, there's several scenes in here that are just literally 1 to 3 lines long, and that's all it takes to transition our characters from one planet to another, one location to another, providing just barely enough context for the story to technically be complete. Apparently, the Bernice Summerfield CDs weren't selling as well as they would have liked, so for future releases they were going to go down to 1 CD. I can't tell what possessed them to start that with this release, but as a result of that decision, this entire thing is so cramped. To quote Gary Russell discussing this decision and how it affected Jacqueline Rayner adapting this, he said, "I honestly can't tell you whether Jack found that easier or harder. I suspect she found it harder because it was Justin, and Justin doesn't write waffle or padding. Taking a Justin Richards novel down to 1 disc was probably quite difficult. With hindsight, I wish we'd done Dragon's Wrath as a double so that our first season was double CDs." And I agree with that last point. This should have all been 2 discs. It's just nice to have that be consistent, but also you can't adapt a novel into 1 hour. When Big Finish did their novel adaptations range for the Doctor Who books, every single one of them was 2 hours. One was 3, and it was the best for that. So you just can fit that much more context into a 2-hour or even 3-hour story. I'll also say that the runtime of this story is made worse by the fact that it's entirely fictitious politics. Closure used real-world stuff to supplement its world building because it's essentially just telling you the story of the lead up to its version of World War II. This is entirely synthetic politics without any real-world analog, with multiple plot twists happening. And this whole thing just led to me getting lost, and worse, I didn't care about the entire story, and I was just waiting for it to be over. I can't help but feel like if this had been a 2-hour release, I would genuinely have a blast with it. Fictitious politics and plot twists are both incredibly fun, when you can keep track of them. Also, the theme song probably really works best with this story, but it is a nice theme song, so I'm not really upset they continued with it. Ultimately, though, this did end up setting up the range for single CD releases in Series 2. And it's definitely just CDs in Series 2. Right? Oh no. Imagine if I just didn't press record and I did 20 takes of that recap to get it in 1 take and none of it was recorded. Oh, thank God. Oh, put it in the wrong slot. No. Don't do that. You belong here. Come on, Jackson, the covers tell you where they go. Or the spines. I can't talk. I need to read from a script and not improv as much. Good gravy. Ultimately, though, this did technically set up the range for the single I can't... Why'd I stick my tongue in my teeth?